No,
Ready?
Oh, good.
Okay, room should be open.
All right, let's see here.
There's a few shots of Costa Noa.
Oh, fun. I
We
love
went down to
that.
Pescadero to review the microgrid program.
Yeah.
Oh,
I might have a conflict on that.
Mics are open.
Kaiso dinner.
Mics are open. Okay,
We're ready.
we're ready. All right.
Alrighty.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this special meeting of the Audit and Finance Committee of Peninsula Clean Energy. Today is Monday, September the 8th, 2025. Could we please have a roll call?
When I call your jurisdiction, if you'll please state your name, Belmont,
Tom McEwen.
you, Burlingame,
Paula Colson.
East Palo Alto,
Carlos Romero?
Los Banos. Oh, you know what? Let me check something here. Ah. Mayor Amabel, I am promoting you to panelist. Thank you.
Michael Amaville.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And Redwood City. Okay, we have a quorum. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Let's see, let's move on to public comment. Do we have anyone in the public or virtually online who would like to comment on any items that are not on the agenda?
We do not have any public comment.
Thank you, and no one in the room. Next item is, we're setting the agenda and approving the consent calendar items. We have one item, approval of minutes from June 9th, 2025 of this committee. Do I have a motion for approval? And then I'll go to public comment.
Public comment first,
Either way,
but there's
do
none.
we have public comment? Okay,
We don't.
all right. We have no public comment. Motion to approve. A second?
Second.
Moved by McEwen and seconded by Donna Colson. All right, call the question. All those in favor?
Oh,
Aye.
Oh, yes, that's correct. We need roll call.
you need me. Belmont,
Aye.
Burlingame,
Hi.
East Palo Alto,
Yes.
Los Banos.
Aye.
Yeah. And Redwood City. Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Next item is chair's report, which I have none for the good of the order. Following item is staff report by Nick, our chief financial officer.
Great,
You have the floor.
thank you. Brianna, is this not working for me or does it need to give me control or something?
Should be working. Okay.
No,
Oh, check the settings.
I'm sorry.
It's not on.
Oh, that would help, okay. There we
There
go,
you go.
okay.
All right.
Morning, everyone. I feel like we haven't met in a while. Last meeting was June where we approved the board, but we ended up postponing all meetings in August. So this was the August meeting, so it says special meeting, but nothing special to talk, just that we're delayed a month. Couple staff report items, and then we'll get into the meat of the meeting. First one is we've been spending a fair amount of time on a potential second prepay transaction. I'm not gonna say much more now because we have a whole section on that, but that's probably where we've been spending most of our time over the last few months, so more to come there. Second item, and I sent an email around to this committee as well as the executive committee, so hopefully you had a chance to see the email and maybe even read the report, but the positive news, S&P revised our outlook from stable to positive at the end of August. Report was, I thought, very positive. They cited our improved liquidity position, as well as some of our improved liquidity and risk management policies, specifically our move to cost of service rate making versus being pegged to PG&E, as well as our commitment to adjust rates if our cash position drops below a certain level. While we would have loved to get an upgrade, as I mentioned in the email I sent around, not too surprising, the rating agencies, a little cynical here, but tend to move slower on the way up and quicker on the way down. Also, I was talking to Mike Berwanger, who's on the phone to talk about prepay, but he was giving me some insight that very, very rarely do, at least in the CCA space, And probably broader than that, do the rating agencies go straight to an upgrade? So it's kind of traditional for them to signal, hey, we're gonna upgrade, we're gonna put you on positive outlook, which means potential and likely upgrade over the next 2 years, and then they'll take the steps. They like to sort of signal so that it's not a surprise. So good news, I think, and hopefully in the next year or two, we'll get the full upgrade to A, which is the equivalent of where we are with Moody's.
Hey, Nick?
Yeah.
Can I just ask you to comment? We had a comment from one of our senior staff members, just, good morning, asking whether or not we were actually were we actively seeking? an increase?
We were not
Comment on that.
We were not actively seeking an upgrade as part
We are
of
not.
S&P and Moody's annual process. They conduct a review of our credit rating at least once a year. And so this was part of their exercise. They came in, actually, I said they came in. We did a Zoom meeting with them in March or April. We obviously put our best foot forward. We wanted to make sure we were perceived in the best possible light. But we were not actively sort of stomping our foot down for an upgrade, but we're happy when they came back with the outlook change.
Great. I just wanted to make that clear that we are not actively pursuing that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nick, I just want to comment that the rating agencies certainly do have a voracious appetite for accumulation of reserves. So they
Yeah. They do like
And
that.
it's just cautionary, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we can stuff a bunch of money in here and not do stuff, so. But it was a great report. I mean, I'm sorry, I actually didn't respond, but I read it.
No.
I was smiling, thinking about how you were probably saying, we're getting it.
I mean, part of it,
Congratulations.
thank you. You read it and you go, what's going on? What's the negative? You know, they say things are great, but we want to see them operate through a downturn or through downside scenarios. So it's always like never enough with the rating agencies, but it is what it is. I think it's the world we live in. Anything else on S&P? So good news there. The rest are sort of more FYI items. Annual audit, something we go through every year, obviously. We've kicked that off. That's also something we've been working on for the last month or so. That is, we are literally right in the need of it now, responding to a ton of data requests, getting our auditors what they need to complete their audit. And we're on track, knock on wood, to present that at the next Audit and Finance Committee meeting in October, and then final board approval in October. So more to come there. Another FYI is we did issue for the first time, I think ever, at least since I've been here, a letter of credit, $1.3 million for the benefit of PG&E. This relates to the financial security requirement that we need to provide PG&E related to the provider of last resort. So this is basically all the IOUs are worried that there could be a huge return of customers back to them at the worst time possible. So the CCAs go have financial challenges. They go bankrupt, which one has. And at that time, they have to go out then and buy power for all those customers coming back to them at the theoretically worst possible time, which would be sort of high prices. And so this is a CPUC requirement that all CCAs must post collateral to the IOUs. It was never that big a deal because up until now, it was $147,000 for us, which we had in an escrow account. It was easy. I think the IOUs were crying foul or claiming that that wasn't enough. And so there was a CPUC process where they revised that calculation on what the amount should be. They came up with that last year. And the new number for us is $1.3 million. All of our CCAs, it's based on a pretty complex mathematical equation. I will say the $1.3 million is the minimum it would ever be. It will be periodically revised, that calculation, twice a year. And so there's a chance, depending on how markets move, the energy markets move, the number could increase to multiples of millions of dollars. So we put in place this letter of credit. It's more cost efficient for us versus an escrow account. Again, when it was $147,000, it didn't really matter. But given we're now in the millions of dollars range, we wanted a letter of credit. So just an FYI, in case you see that on me in the financial results. And then the last thing is just again an FYI, enterprise risk management, which I've mentioned in prior meetings. That's sort of our next frontier on the risk front, which again, a lot of the risk policies and procedures we put in place were recognized by S&P. we've officially launched that program. We've had meetings with all the department heads, with Sean and Shalini. We had a good discussion at our offsite last week. We will be bringing that back likely to the finance committee later this year with sort of an update on where we are, what the risks are, and how we're managing those. So more to come, but just wanted to keep you abreast of what we've been doing.
Any questions on this report? Yes.
Yeah, Nick, did you say one of the other CCAs defaulted?
Yes,
Yes, years ago.
What happened?
Long time ago.
it was not a
Timing
client of
launch.
ours.
It was
Yeah, it
It was
was
a timing
the
launch.
timing of launch and
small. They were very, very
it was
small.
Western Community Power down in Southern California, and they just did not have the margins to make it over time. But it was frankly a little mishandled, so
Exactly.
we're all kind of having the consequences of that mishandling as a result.
Okay. Any
Nick,
questions?
just a quick question. So the $1.3 million letter of credit is on our books and will show up kind of in the audit as a liability, correct?
It won't show up, it's not debt, it'll
Okay.
show up, I believe, in the notes, so
Okay.
like as words, not numbers on the balance sheet, because we've not issued debt, it's just basically, and we get LCs all the time from counterparties, it's
Right,
basically
correct.
collateral. But it'll show up as a commitment, but not as on our face of our financial statements.
Okay, great. Even better. Thank you.
And with the fee, we have to pay a 1.4% fee on this, so it's not free, but it's cheaper than the escrow account. Okay, now into the meat of the presentation, prepay transaction. I have Michael Berwanger on the phone to answer any questions in case I can't, or just to support me. He works for PFM, who is a financial advisor who we've hired again to support us in this transaction. Just a quick background, since a lot of you probably haven't thought of prepay since we did ours about 8 months ago. As a reminder, we executed our transaction last October. Through this transaction, CCCFA issued kind of on our behalf, almost $1 billion of bonds to access the tax exempt market, since that's what they do. We, through this transaction, assigned 4 of our existing PPAs to the transaction. And as a result of a bunch of, movement of monies, we ended up saving about 12.3% on this transaction, or about $5.7 million a year for the initial 8 years. I've briefed this committee on this before, so a great transaction. We're really happy. We timed it well. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, but we're really happy with how it went. One of our concerns was all this looks good on paper, but is there going to be more effort, more complexity? Yes, a little more complexity, but I'm happy to say that we've got the invoicing down. We've got the sort of post-transaction execution administrations going smoothly or relatively smoothly. And we're realizing savings of like $500,000 a month. So it's not only
That's
theoretical, it's reality.
And for the next, is it
8
years?
8 years is how this initial set, and then it'll reset for another probably 7 to 8 years. So I think hopefully good news, and I'm not here to talk too much about our last transaction, but just wanted to remind everyone. Since we did our deal last October, the prepay, other CCAs have continued to access this market. And I'll show you on the next page whose those are, but there have been 8 more transactions since our deal. And they've all generated double-digit savings, so at least 10.5%. Again, ours was 12.3%. Some have been more than ours, some have been less. We've started the process. We always knew this wasn't going to be a one and done transaction, or likely not a one and done transaction. So we've, over the last few months, started the process of preparing for a potential second prepay transaction. Likely of similar size, although a lot to be determined there. I will note, and we'll go through the market in a second, the market is not great right now. So I'll caveat that at the outset, and Mike can talk more about it. It's definitely not as favorable as when we did our deal last October. If we were to go to market today, which we're not saying we would, the savings would be like 8%. So a lot less than the 12%, and probably something we wouldn't want to proceed with. But Markets move, as we all know, and it's a little bit of a hurry up and wait recommendation. And so the advisors, this is sort of a recommendation of, let's get ready, let's get the documents ready, let's be prepared for when the market does turn, we can access it quickly. And so that's where we are today. So we're not at all saying we would go tomorrow or even next month, but we want to be ready and be in position for when the market improves or returns, which we hope it will. I guess there's a chance it takes a while, but we want to be ready. I also put here of note that there are other CCAs in the same situation as we are, some ahead of us, some behind us. So I note Silicon Valley Clean Energy and Ava, who have both done 3 transactions each. So this would be, I think, their 4th transactions respectively. They have already gone to their board. They've gone to the CCCFA board, received approval, and they are just in a waiting game. So their documents are ready. They're waiting for that market to improve so that they can sort of pounce and access the market. This is a list, sorry, it's a little small, a list of all the CCAs that have executed transactions over the last 5 years or so. I've highlighted ours, which is kind of in the middle there. And you can see the 8 transactions since. At the bottom, you can see there's been 3 transactions in this calendar year, so March, June, and July. But it's been slow because the market is not great. Market was basically shut down between March and June due to Liberation Day and all the market turmoil there. It opened up a little bit in June and July, and you can see Marin and San Diego both did deals, albeit lower than the 12% we saw.
Can you, so on the right-hand side there,
Yep.
is that stacked? It's not stacked by returns, right?
No, it's by
Or
date
By date, okay.
on the left.
So we're in
It's-
the middle.
Yeah, it's from,
But the highest was
16.9.
16.9 and 15.2, 14. So
We're in the
3.
middle.
we're in the middle.
Yeah, we're pretty good.
Good work.
Do you wanna look at this?
Yeah, and I
Is it
asked
on?
Mike,
I'm talking
he
about-
knows because he's laughing probably. I asked him why the 16.6,
Oh,
and it's a
okay.
little
Yeah,
bit
he's
of
okay, no
timing and
worries.
who the third party funder they was able to participate in their transaction. We hope to get those kind of numbers, but it's a little bit, I wouldn't say luck, but it's, you got to deal with the markets ahead of you.
If you just want bragging rights.
I would love bragging rights.
It's funny, we all ask that same question. Hey, how did CPA do that?
And again, the last few deals, Mike can comment on San Diego's deal, but my understanding is they were scratching for every possible savings they could get, as every CCA would be, and getting even the
Mhm.
10.5% was apparently a huge challenge. So, and if we were to go today again, we're talking 8%. So we hope to get these numbers. We probably wouldn't proceed unless it was a double-digit percentage, but I just wanted to give you some data points. As a reminder, the market for these transactions is entirely driven, I'd say almost, but it's pretty much entirely driven by the spread between taxable rates and tax exempt rates. We are taking advantage of our ability to basically issue tax exempt debt. That's typically, anywhere from 75 basis points to 1% lower than taxable debt. This graph here on the left shows that spread basically between taxable and tax exempt interest rates. Higher is better, as I said, and you can see on the right, we've sort of blown out the year to date. You can see the decline in sort of March and April due to Liberation Day and all the turmoil in the market. It's slowly been recovering, so we did see those 2 transactions in June and July. But since then, it's kind of stalled out a little bit, and as I mentioned, if we were to go today, it would be probably a no-go. I put some pages on here and just to give you an idea of sort of how things move and and why the savings are less today than they were when we did our deal. So the top is when we did our deal 9 months ago. Left is muni bonds, which is the tax exempt rate. The right is funding rate, which is really the taxable rate. And what you want is a higher spread. So you can see at the top, I did the difference between funding rate and muni bond rate. So B minus A is 1.07%. So when we did our deal, that was the spread between taxable versus tax exempt. And there's 2 components of the yield. There's the risk-free rate, so the US Treasury or MMD is the equivalent in the muni space. And then there's the spread on top of the risk-free rate that a company needs to issue. Take us to today, which is the bottom part of the graph. you can see the spread is half, it's 55 basis points. I yellow highlighted it at the bottom, and so that result is a significantly reduced savings. And again, it's hard because, and I could go into the numbers in more detail, there's some go up, some go down. But the punchline is, right now, savings are a lot less than they were last October, unfortunately. We hope this changes and we want to be ready for when it does. If you talk to the bankers or Michael, they'll say it will, it always does return, but right now, this is where we are in the markets. Mike, would you add anything there?
No, I agree. Yeah, it's just the way markets work. Things ebb and flow. We just need to sort of wait. Just like Liberation Day, there'll be something comparable to that that'll swing things back the other way. I think that's what's been proven this year. Volatility is a guarantee.
So it's hard to talk about, it's weird for me to talk about a transaction when like today we wouldn't go. We wouldn't do one today, but we still want to be ready to go. So how do we get there? So this is a timeline. We are on the left, obviously, September 8th committee meeting right now. For the next 3 weeks, the plan is to get the documents ready, prepared transaction documents. That's basically a lot of work. To be honest, it's not a lot of work for me. It's a lot of work for the lawyers, thankfully. So that's what they're busily doing. The stack of papers is like this high. It's ridiculous, but thankfully it's a lot of cut and paste. You know, this is a trod path. From there are a bunch of steps. I won't read every word on here. But basically our goal is to get to the board meeting at the end of October, which is where we will take this transaction for approval, pending market conditions. After that, we will be ready to access the market as soon as the week of October 27th. As we've said before, we will not move forward unless the market is there. So this is not we will do a deal, but we want to be ready to go at that time. And then the soonest we would sort of price a transaction would be that week and then close the week later. Again, this could slip, you know, to use the example of Silicon Valley right now, they've been waiting for a couple weeks. And so they just we need to be ready and then go when the market's there. This is just a list of who's involved. I used this page when we did the deal a year ago. It's exact same. We ended up doing a RFP or mini RFP for the prepaid supplier, the banker that we work with. As remember, we worked with Goldman Sachs on the last transaction. We were very happy with their services, but we felt like we owed it to ourselves to see what else was out there and what the other banks could do. And so we had sort of a mini bake-off presentations with the other two main players, which are Morgan Stanley and Royal Bank of Canada. And after a lot of detailed conversations, we decided to stick with Goldman Sachs. We were happy with the transaction. There's a ton of efficiencies with going with the same provider. There are benefits of diversification, to be honest. And that's something we will consider if we do a third deal.
If we do Goldman, are there other secondary underwriters?
Yes, so as we did last transaction, we will use a minority-owned firm as a co-manager and give them, I think we gave them 5% economics in the last deal, but it's just two banks. It's not like a typical bond deal where you have 7. And so we ended up sticking with Goldman Sachs through it all. Again, RBC and Morgan Stanley, great firms, and I know can do the deal and do it well. But we just felt, again, the benefits of sort of sticking with the same outweighed the benefits of diversification. But I think we will weight diversification maybe more heavily on if we do a next deal, a third deal. But the rest of the players are the same. We're working with PFM, Chapman and Cutler, Oric as the law firms, et cetera. And that's sort of it. I included in here the schematic, which I won't probably bore you with, just to remind people how the transaction works. But I think we made this presentation like 5 times last year. Our plan is to take it to the executive committee meeting in a month, which Don, I know you're on too, so you'll hear probably a similar presentation. And then the board for their approval at the end of the month. Sean and I were talking about doing sort of a prepay 101, so to speak, for new board members, since they weren't here a year ago. And so we'll probably offer that.
Yeah. Have they come up with better nomenclature
Excuse me?
than prepay?
That's a good, no, they haven't come up with a better term. They should, since I keep saying we're not prepaying for anything.
Yeah, it should.
That's a terrible name.
Well, maybe, yeah, we should think about that.
Any questions, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, just because this is so different from what I am used to dealing with in the public sector. I think the flow chart was really good. That's what I was kind of waiting for.
Yeah.
I've said before, I've never seen a completely riskless financial transaction. And I know everybody's done their homework here. I know other people have done it. I'm concerned about an element of financial risk precisely because I don't understand it. And, you know, let me, bear with me here.
Okay.
Because, so Goldman's, if I understand this, Goldman Sachs is selling taxable bonds.
They are the underwriter. They don't know, they're not selling taxable bonds.
Who is selling the taxable bonds?
There's
Yeah,
no,
It's Goldman and they're tax exempt. Sorry, Nick.
Yeah.
Tax exempt.
the
yeah.
there's tax exempt bonds that are issued.
CCCFA.
CCCFA issues those tax exempt bonds.
Fine.
And then there is a taxable counterparty to be determined that borrows money on a taxable rate.
Right.
Right,
And
Mike?
I
When you-
understand it's a play between those.
It's a play, it's arbitrage between those two rates.
Right. Okay, so I'm not worried about the CCCFA bonds defaulting. Because I don't understand the taxable bonds, I'm worried about somebody in that food chain
Yeah.
defaulting. And the consequences coming back to us in some way, again, precisely because I don't understand it, that's why I'm asking this kind of stupid question.
I mean,
No,
Mike's
it's
got a
not.
lot of them. Do you want?
What?
Feel free, or Mike is here.
Yeah, I'll turn over to Mike, but it's a great question. We thought, I've had the same cynical perspective last year, like there's not free, no such thing as a free lunch. We've looked at a lot of the risks. I think we've gotten comfortable as we did this deal last year. That they are very minimal, if all none. There is the risk that the funding provider and Goldman Sachs goes bankrupt, like a Lehman Brothers. In that situation, the transaction is basically, I'm probably not using the right legal terms, Michael, but canceled. And basically it goes back to the way it was before, which is today. We just don't get the discount. So in that scenario, we were counting on 12% discount. Maybe we realized 12% discount for a year, 2 years, something goes wrong. We then revert to just paying the PPA full price. And that downside is we wasted a lot of time and effort. There is potentially the only thing we could think of was a little egg on our face. Maybe there's an article, Lehman Brothers goes bankrupt, but there's no financial risk. Mike, do you want to add anything?
Well, it's funny you chose Lehman, Nick, because this actually happened to a Lehman transaction decade ago, I guess now, 2 decades ago, when they went under. They had just 3 months prior done a transaction down in Georgia. They sat in the funding recipient box and they sat in the Goldman box for that deal. They went bankrupt, so they sold the bonds for a utility in Florida. It was a gas transaction. 3 months later, they went bankrupt. What happened? Exactly what Nick just described is exactly what happened. So the Georgia entity, that CCCFA, and then that Florida entity was Peninsula, those 2 boxes to the left, held harmless. The bondholders had to go and seek recourse to Lehman Brothers through the bankruptcy estate, but they had no recourse back to the Georgia entity or the Florida entity. So if the worst case happens, the investors are very clear, the POS, the offering statement that goes out to investors and the way the deal is structured, they take risk to Goldman and to the funding recipient, making them whole. And there's no direct line between the bondholders and CCCFA or Peninsula. So it's what we call take and pay structure. So as long as you're receiving energy, you pay for it. But the second you stop receiving energy, you're not paying anything. As compared to, like any bonds that you might have experienced, at, your local municipalities, you sell bonds, you're supposed to pay it back. It's like your mortgage, you're supposed to pay it back. That's not the way this works. You and CCCFA are not promising to pay back the bonds.
Okay.
I
Thanks.
mean, It's confusing. We've asked the same questions, and have gotten comfortable that the risk is really, almost none. We've had trouble coming up with any risk. Some of the negatives we thought of or risks were, the back office, the invoicing, will that all work, additional work? And I think through the first transaction, we felt that it is. It's a little more extra work, Roy and his team, but it's definitely worth the $5.7 million of savings.
Probably the biggest risk I would say would be political risk. So for example, if somehow these all defaulted and somebody started looking at them and saying like CCAs are bilking
Right.
the public out of, on these municipal bonds, they were never feasible or something like that. That would be a big.
That's a
risk.
reputation.
And that's,
I mean,
we're completely
Extreme.
above board.
right, no, totally, but all
Sensitive
I'm
to
saying is,
policy.
like, what it reminds me of, Tom, is when there was securities lending going on for pension funds. And the idea was you can lend your securities, they're gonna pay you a return on your securities. And there was no risk, it was risk-free. And then the issue became people lost, they were shorting the securities and they didn't have the funds to cover them. And so the securities were actually taken away from your portfolio. And your coverage was only like, wasn't enough to make it up.
And was that bad actor risk then in that
That,
case? or-
well, it wasn't bad actor, that was actual financial risk, because the pension funds were actually getting their securities to somebody else. The default risk, like San Mateo County never did that when I was on the board, we never allowed it. Sandy Arnott and I worked on that, and no, but the issue really is there that kind of a risk? But I mean, to me, all this risk is always around like somehow the media somehow says there's something wrong, but I've looked at this every single way till Sunday and run it through some people I know in the financial services industry, independent, and they're like, it's just pure arbitrage. It's just a pure arbitrage play.
Tom, I would suggest too, if you want to attend the briefing that we're gonna do, just if you have deeper dive questions, you're welcome to attend that. I don't know when it's gonna be, but we'll get that scheduled.
Yeah, let me know. I'm on.
Yeah.
I think
And
it's
we'll invite
interesting.
everyone. Well, maybe there's some.
We have Brown Act issues,
Sorry.
so
Okay.
it's really meant for first tier would be new board members for whom this is brand new, because all these questions are so legitimate and it'll come up again. But we can certainly include you if you like.
Any questions on, nothing to approve here, just an FYI.
Just a really quick process question. So the rates don't actually get locked in until October?
Or
you issue.
until we do the deal.
The day you
The
actually
day we
issue,
do the
the
transaction.
market will bid the bond debt based on risk and interest rates and the economy. And then it'll price right live on the market.
And that could be a day after it's approved, or 3 months after it's approved, or this is, they go into watch mode.
Yeah.
In order to pull the proverbial trigger to do as best we can with the rates.
To reach that at least 10% window, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, minimum.
minimum,
I
I
would say
think
that.
last year the board, we said 9% minimum, but that's probably even like a 10%.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, let me ask, are there any other questions from directors? Okay, so none, then I'll ask. When does the paperwork get stale? That is to say, so in a rising interest rate environment, we would be interested in entering the market. We may be entering a declining interest rate environment. If, the king says that, and he gets his way, if we wind up pushing down interest rates significantly over the next, or if we just wind up, getting a rate cut, September, perhaps one toward the end of the year, then we're in a worse position today than not, so that if you compare the documents, how long are they good for? Do they become
They
stale?
expire, yeah.
First though, I will caveat that declining interest rates themselves are not necessarily bad, because again, we're looking for the delta.
No, correct, spread,
The
right?
spread. Now, lower rates make just the law of numbers
Yeah.
potentially could bring that spread down, but just because interest rates go down doesn't mean that the market is not gonna be hospitable for us. But as far, I don't think they go stale at any time. I know CCCFA, when they've been approving these transactions, Mike, I believe they say they're good for like 6 months and then they have to come back to the board. So I know that's a little bit of a limitation, but I don't know if the legal documents have a.
Yeah.
Expiration date.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's the soft touch at CCCFA where you have to just go back and post them, but that's not like a firm requirement. There's two pieces. There's a rating aspect where usually once you get the rating, it's good for 3 to 6 months. And then at some point you have to go back and just kind of reaffirm it, if you will. And then the other issue would be related to the disclosure, right? So assuming nothing changes, that's material that has to be, updated in your offering statement. You're otherwise, everything is kind of, once you're good, you kind of put it on the shelf and you could sit there for 3 to 6 months. And some of these deals have sat for 4 or 5 months. Not in California, but elsewhere throughout the country. So it's not normal, but it's not like unheard of either.
Thus, if we were to move forward and say, yes, let's prepare for this. We would assume that somewhere within a 3-4 month period of November the 3rd, we'd have a transaction. Because if we're talking about these dates in terms of, the rating being good, well, the soft touch issue with CCCFA is just perfunctory. Right, so the assumption is we go down this road, we will transact this sometime within the next X number of months. I mean, we can always say no, right?
Yeah.
And lose the money, right?
There's no, I mean, the one benefit of this, unfortunately for Mike and others, is no one gets paid unless there's a deal, other than the rating agencies. There's no
Right,
fee.
yeah, thanks
paid.
for reminding me about that, yeah.
So it's only a success-based transaction fee.
Which is common on most of them.
Yeah. Mike, maybe you jump in. I'm hoping that we do a deal in the next 3 to 6 months or 3 months or sooner, but I guess I also want to set expectations that today the market is not open. And so I don't know when it's gonna reopen. I always joke if I did, I'd work at a hedge fund. But yes, our hope, I know hope is not a strategy, but our hope is that we execute this calendar year. I don't know, Mike, would you add anything?
That is my hope as well. Ava has a POS out there. They were in a holding pattern and, as you described, there's a couple other folks, Silicon Valley's right behind them and you guys, and we're hoping that these will get done, but we're also prepared to wait it out. No rush, right? You set your targets, you want to hit the target and, we should make sure that we do that.
You don't want to be forced into a
Yeah.
non-optimal transaction. I know, Donna, you mentioned this before and want to give the board comfort that we will not do a deal for the sake of doing a deal. So we will have thresholds and bogeys that we'll target and won't do it. We'll sit tight if we're not there.
Great. Okay, I know we've had this conversation before and I know, and we had probably kicked this idea around for a couple of years before we actually did it. So we have looked under the hood and this one successful transaction, I think, is an indication that perhaps we should try to do it again with some parameters and what goes out. So,
I mean, the other thing just to note, and hopefully you saw on this page, but many of our peers are multiple transactions. I mean, CPA's done, I think, 5 deals. Silicon Valley, Ava. So this is typical, they see the savings and there's no reason not to go and get more. San Diego's done 1, but as I mentioned, they've done
They're
2.
pretty good.
They did 1 right after us and they just already done their second. Marine Clean Energy's now done 3 deals, so. Okay, great. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate you joining.
I just want
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, everybody.
Oh,
Public comment. Oh, sorry. Yes. Someone was speaking.
I think that might have been Mike.
Mike.
That was mine.
Okay. No public comment. Thank you very much, Mike, for being on. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay.
No public comment. Let's move on to the next item, second to the last, which is the fiscal year 2025 financial report.
Yes, so this is a standing item, may seem a little stale or dated at this point, but again, this meeting was supposed to be last month, but this is just a review of the fiscal year 25 financial results, which were done last June or is for the June year end. Similar format that you've all seen that we've kind of refined over the last year or so. But first page here is load. This is an area that we've been a little off budget, to be quite candid. For the full year, we were 4.2% below budget. Granted, that's 2% higher than last year, but we were expecting it to be, 5 to 6% higher than last year. I will say that Roy's team manages the forecast here. And this is an area where we're really looking to recalibrate our modeling and our forecasting. Unfortunately, the employee who is in charge of this has left, but we've got a new employee in, and we're hoping that something we can get more accurate on going forward. Again, 4% is not a huge variance, but it is a variance that impacts our financials. A lot of the driver of load is weather. So we did have a mild first half of the year. We can't control that, but that's not explaining the whole 4%. But there's a lot of other variances from behind the meter activity, as well as just commercial activity, coming out of the pandemic. But you can see the graph on the right. The budget is the orange line, was consistently above what we were forecasting basically throughout the year. Next, that takes us to revenue. Again, to get everyone's eyes level set on what we're looking at. The top is the last quarter, so the fourth quarter of the fiscal year. The bottom is the full year. There's always a lot of noise on quarter to quarter, so I kind of prefer to look at the full year. But for both the quarter and the full year, we were below budget. $7.8 million for the quarter, $15.6 million for the full year. The reason for that is load. As I just showed you, we were 4% below load, so load translates to revenue. Less kilowatt hours means less revenue. The other reason we were below budget is a rate decrease, which is great news for our customers. As a reminder, we decreased rates in February of this calendar year, increasing our discount from 5% to 10%. And so that's great news for our customers, but that does mean less revenues, less money coming in the door for PCE. I will note that this excludes the impact of rate stabilization fund. I have a page on that, but all of these pages kind of exclude that because it sort of adds noise to the analysis. Please jump in with any questions. I'm happy to just drone on, but want to leave time. Cost of energy. As we all know, this is by far and away our largest driver of our cost profile. Again, top part of the page is the quarter. The bottom part is the full year. A lot of noise in the quarter. For both the quarter and the full year, we were below budget. So great news there. $5 million in the quarter, but $63 million for the full year below budget. So a huge positive variance. This should not be new news. We've seen this throughout the year. A bunch of reasons for that variance. The first is, again, load. Load drives everything. So load means less revenue, but it also means less cost of energy because we don't have to buy the electrons for our customers. So that is a big driver on the energy line item. We also saw lower prices throughout the year, both on the energy prices as well as resource adequacy, which is like capacity prices. So those two are probably the primary drivers of the variance. We did realize the prepay savings. We just talked about that. It's only about 6 months because the savings, we only started realizing those in February, but that's a couple $1 million. So that's great news. We do forecast a contingency, or we do budget for a contingency. Last year, it was $29 million for the full year. That is there in case, we have any heat events, as an example, where we end up having to purchase, a lot more power at the wrong time. And so we put that in there for good contingency and risk management planning. Good news, we didn't have to use the contingency. So you can see in the actuals that's zero, but we did budget for it. So that's a big, almost half of the variance for the full year. There is one negative number there on the page, or both for the quarter and the year, and that's on the REC GHG free cost. We were above budget significantly in the quarter and also for the full year. And the reason for that is it's it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's timing. We are rec and GHG free products on a calendar year compliance period. And so a lot of those costs were incurred in the front part of the calendar year for a variety of reasons. We are expecting to be below budget for the full year, so that means for the next 6 months, the beginning of this fiscal year will be below. So it's a little bit of noise and timing issue, so I wouldn't focus too much on it, but it did result in some variance in the fiscal year. Any questions on cost of energy? Okay. So change in net position, which is again, the equivalent of sort of a net income line, item in most for-profit companies. These are all the line items together. This first page is the quarter. So again, we've got the actuals, the budget, last year's actuals, and the variance. So I think the best column to focus on is the variance, which is the fourth from the left. As we talked about, revenues were below budget, cost of energy was below budget. So net, we were 2.6 million below budget, so to speak. But we made that up on our operating expenses, which were 2.7 below budget. Most of that was driven by program spend, which has continually been below budget throughout the full year, and you'll see that on the next page. The other big variances in the non-operating income you can see there, that was due to our cash position. We were pretty conservative in our budgeting, so I've mentioned this pretty much every quarter. We don't know where interest rates are going to be, and we thought they'd be lower than they are today, which they're not. And so we've realized a lot more interest income. We also realized in this quarter, good news, $3.7 million related to the investment tax credit associated with our GovPV program. So this is money that we had expected to come in, but we were forecasting the cash. We thought it was going to be accounted for as a reduction in capital, but after talking to our accountants, they wanted to book it as a non-operating income. So it just shows up as a variance on the income statement line item, but it's not really a variance on our cash position. I think the more interesting page to look at is the full year. So this shows the full results of our last fiscal year. Again, the top of the page shows the revenue, which was below budget. We talked about that. The cost of energy, which was very below budget. Middle of the page, you can see all of our operating expenses, which were pretty close to budget. Compensation was a little above, the others were a little below. The big variance is on the programs, which I circled there, $12.5 million. Again, this is a common theme that I've said all year long. We saw a big delay in our building electrification, both residential and commercial program, as well as slower uptake on our EV program. We're expecting those to reverse next year, so we're expecting increase in spend, but this past year we were well under budget, and something we've talked about before. And then again, non-operating income, most of that is just interest on our cash balance, gains that we realized. Interest rates came down throughout the year, so that's gains, and then the ITC that I referenced. So net for the full year, excluding the impact of any rate stabilization, deferral, or recognition, we were almost $80 million better than budget on change in net position. So a great year. We talked about all the reasons. Most of it was on the cost of energy, which I referenced. Any questions here? Okay. So I've been caveating the whole time that all this excludes the rate stabilization fund. So again, excluding the rate stabilization fund, we are coming in at about $69.1 million of change in net position. Our proposal, our recommendation is to defer $60 million to the rate stabilization fund. As you may remember, we went to the board. And we sort of signaled that this was coming. We talked about a temporary waiver on the limit of how much we can put into the rate stabilization fund, which the board approved. So this is not a surprise. We just didn't know the exact dollar amount until the year was done. But at this point, we're recommending $60 million. It's an even number. There's no magic to it. It could be 62, it could be 65, but we're recommending $60 million. That results in a change in net position after that deferral of $9.1 million, which is pretty close to the budget. Doesn't really matter, but just as a reference point, and that's about 2% of revenues. That will bring our rate stabilization fund balance to $127 million, which unfortunately will be needed over the next 2 years to really offset the expected increase we're foreseeing in the PCIA. Again, something we've talked a lot about with the board and I think this committee. And so it's a great resource we have. We're in a luxury to be in this position. And I think our customers will really benefit from those lower rates and utilizing this balance over the next 2 years.
I'm sorry, let me go to director first and I'll ask my question. Any question for Nick?
I have one more page too.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
Okay, the last page is cash. So you can see at the top, our cash position going back the last 5 years or from a year ago. We ended the year with $441 million of cash and investments. You can see where all that is. Camp is our sort of short-term product, and PFM and Chandler are longer term investment, longer term meaning like 2 to 3 years. And then we just keep about $15 million as operating cash at JP Morgan. That results in 394 days cash on hand. But we do have an adjusted days cash on hand, which takes into consideration board approved, and this is approved by the board, the adjusted calculation that considers the rate stabilization fund as well as board approved capital projects. So basically this is money that's already been earmarked to go out the door over the next few years. And so when you adjust our cash for those 2 items, it brings our days cash on hand down to 235 days, which is, right within our target of where we want to be. So that is my prepared remarks. There's some appendix pages, a little more detail, but Carlos, happy to take any questions.
Questions from directors, meeting members?
Question.
Yes.
I saw I think it was $500,000 of unspent money for marketing. And I was curious, do we have a marketing budget for each of our programs? How does that work? Because I think another $60 million for the rate stabilization fund is incredible. It'd be awesome to use some of the extra remaining funds to shout that from the mountaintops, but I wasn't sure.
So on the marketing side, we actually came in right on budget. $2.7 million for the full year. We were $500,000 above last year. So I don't know, Sean, if you want, Gwen's not here. I think we spend, we don't want to waste money, but I think that program feels like they're.
We do. That is where most of our money goes, is to support our different program marketing. We also in the past year got a new website. We've done a lot of investigation on branding and naming, which will be coming to the board here soon. So more to come, but that's a quick summary about why it's a higher budget this year.
So yeah, I'm sorry for misreading that.
No worries.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? I'll then ask mine. If the change in net position for this year is 78.8, and we are, adjusting that number by the subtraction of the rent stabilization fund, which is $60 million. Why is it that we're using a $69.1 million net position as opposed to the $78.8 million position? So do you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, the 69.1 is the number. Sorry, Matt, probably too many numbers on the page. The 78.8 is the variance to budget. So does that make sense? So
Yeah,
The
okay,
actual.
variance to budget, actual 69.1, okay, fine.
sorry, so
I see,
69.1
yes,
versus
yes.
a budget of negative
Okay, I
9.7.
see where the 69 comes from.
Yeah,
I too was looking at the wrong column.
sorry, maybe I need
It's
to,
easy to do it this hour in the morning.
maybe too many numbers on the
Alright.
page. But yeah, 69.1 is where we are ending
No.
up. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, no problem. Any further embarrassment of me.
problem.
Just kidding. Thank you. Other comments? Okay. All in all, a good year. Do we have
Very
anything
good
on the public?
We don't, but we check.
Very good year to prepare for those that might be less good. Tricky coming forward, but we're in very good shape heading into it.
Yes. Agreed. Anything else you want to add to this? Nick? Okay.
No,
Okay.
I mean, I could talk more, but I don't want to waste your guys' time. This is why I live this stuff, so I love it.
No, this is helpful.
I'm glad you
Donna,
love
do you have
it.
anything to
Nah.
add? Okay,
No, I'm glad you love it.
great. Yeah, we sleep more easily at night.
Well,
I
it's
second
fun.
that.
I mean, this is each quarter, you get a little bit of a snapshot of how you're doing, and there's always a story and timing, and so it's kind of, again, this is, I guess,
Totally.
the loser that I am, but you get the full year and you get to see it all come together and variance, and so it's
And the
just
thing that
only
we're,
problem, it's a little dated at this point, but
yeah, that we talk about too is just really trying to crack the code on this, the forecasting,
yeah,
you
Yeah.
know,
the
and
load especially.
on the load and all of that, so. That remains challenging, but we're closing the gap.
Yeah, we will soon get our, I know it takes a little while to close the books, but we'll soon get our July results, and so we'll see how we're doing. Our report card compared to our budget, we are always trying to improve our accuracy.
Mhm.
In one sense, I see the variance of $78.8 million, and on one side, you can say that's great, you guys spent a lot less than you were budgeting, saved money. On the other side, cynic would say we were really bad at forecasting. And so we are trying to tighten that. I mean, there's good reason. We have contingency. And so we don't want to spend contingency for the sake of it. Markets moved in our favor, but we'd really like to tighten that variance.
I think one of the only ways you could really, I mean, you don't have weather forecasts, that's the
Yeah.
problem. It's. You can forecast business and things, I think, pretty well, but I think residential is just so hard to forecast.
Well, then you have a spike like we did, seems like last year, but it was a couple of years ago in September of,
Yeah, when you
Guess
had
it
the
would've been
heat wave
22.
for like 10
yeah.
days.
And that was just a crazy KISO bill and everything else. So that sticks in your mind, right? And you just want to hedge your bets a bit.
Yeah.
In case you have an event like that.
Oh, look, cold winter.
Yeah. Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, I haven't used my air conditioning at all this year.
Yeah,
It's been a freezing summer.
yeah, it's been the cold.
Absolutely
I've used
freezing.
my heater instead. You know,
Yeah, I'll just add, forecasting is a stochastic process. That is to say, I don't know what it is, little, entropy. We don't know where those numbers come from.
Yeah.
And so it's an art rather than a science.
it is.
Indeed.
Just quickly, I don't remember, I read the report, by the rating agency, but did they cite the 394 days cash on hand, or was the adjusted,
They cited 394.
They did.
That's just our own
Good.
board approved calculation, yeah.
yeah, all right, that's all.
They calculated 389, so slightly different, but yeah.
Okay. Excellent.
But
Okay,
they mention in there, they know that we are going to, the rate stabilization fund and will be utilized over the next few years.
Yeah.
Sort of
They
mention that.
acknowledge that.
Okay, that's it.
okay, thank you. So our next item is committee member reports. Do we have any? Yes.
Real
Tom.
quickly, I have one anecdotal thing. We have had a whole bunch of short planned outages from PG&E in my neighborhood. And I think they're replacing almost all of the transformers. And this is 100% single-family residential neighborhood. And I get some complaints from residents, and I go talk to this one guy, and PG&E wants to put a big transformer in his front yard. And he goes, I didn't ask for that, I don't need that. But my neighbor has 2 Teslas, and he wants a rapid charger. Those 20-minute Tesla chargers require a 480 volt 3-phase circuit. So they may be starting to put in that kind of circuit in houses. That's a fairly common circuit in big buildings for like elevator motors and ginormous HVAC systems. But you never see that in houses. So I'm just wondering, if our forecasting the future load in kind of single family residential neighborhoods is ambitious enough. We may be actually seeing more load in these kind of neighborhoods than anybody was expecting due to solar installations and Tesla chargers. So I'm just curious if anybody has seen things like that.
I mean, I don't know, Rocco. Oh, yeah. he's here.
Yeah, hi, I am not aware of that being the trend. It's pretty unusual to have a very high power filter like that. This is the first I've heard.
Okay, well, it was just something to
I'm
kind
actually a little surprised they would allow it, to be honest with you.
of, well, me too. You know,
It's an interesting deployment of
yeah,
interconnection.
yeah, I mean, again, I've seen that in big buildings all the time, but I've never seen anything more than 240
Level two.
in a house. And, okay, that's it.
But yes, we do look at it. It's also kind of part of the growing strategy around our distributed energy resource portfolio and, you know, how all of that feeds into our overall forecasting. It's very, very de minimis right now, but it is an area we see for growth, but we also want to like treat it with a little bit of conservative planning. And that also is an art. So. Anything to say about that?
Any other reports? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.
All right.
Thank you, and our next
Thank you.
meeting is,
Next month.
it is next month.